Yet another of the long line of schools of thought in international relations is feminist theory. So, in addition to liberalism, which places a big emphasis on the role of international relation of organizations and things like that, as well as norms and values, realism, which centrally focuses on the state, Marxism, which puts a central focus on the economy and the interests of the wealthy and the bourgeoisie, and English school, which is similar to liberalism and realism as a combination of the two. Along came women who said to themselves, well, something is missing here. That would be over 50% of the global population, that being us. Feminist theory is essentially a response to the fact that historically women have been underrepresented, both in terms of international relations scholarship and also in terms of leadership on the global stage. So, feminist theory is essentially this. Feminist theory is that a lot of the reason why states do things they do and behave in the way they behave comes down to biology. What this means is that essentially women have less testosterone and more estrogen. As such, they are less likely to be combative, violent, etc., etc., and instead are more likely to be caring, nurturing, and have a policy of love thy neighbor. So, the belief, in a way, is a little bit similar to the aforementioned democratic theory. The belief that every country that war can be completely stopped by every country being democratic. This is the belief that war can be stopped if every country is ruled by a woman. More or less, essentially. It's not that simple, but that is kind of the gist of it. So, one thing that feminist theory likes to bring up is with regards to security. Feminist theory makes the argument that when it comes to security, there is a hyper focus on things such as militarization, things such as amassing of weapons, and things such as deterrence, for example, the aforementioned MAD or nuclear deterrence, or just large militaries as a way to prevent war. So it's essentially the threat of violence that begets violence. According to feminist critics, this undermines the idea of ways that women might be more inclined to solve such a problem. This include, for example, things such as nurturing or caring for one another, or as I mentioned earlier, love thy neighbor. Feminist theory is also critical of other forms of international relations theory. So its big criticism on things such as realism and the English school is that they don't take into account marginalized voices such as women, gender minorities, sexual minorities, etc., etc. A big issue here, liberalism they are a little bit more against, but they still don't think it goes quite far enough. This particular feminist theory talks quite a bit about the relations of women, especially women in the global south. They believe when you're discussing imperialism and things of that nature, that you have to actively center women in these conversations, especially poor women and women of the global south. You also have to center women of a particular less valuable class, or also perhaps women who are bigender or transgender. However, like every theory, this theory isn't without its criticisms. One such criticism of this theory is that it is a little bit too Western-centric. And this is true to an extent. The majority of the women who adhere to this particular theory come from the West. And the fact of the matter is, depending on where exactly you are coming from, you are going to have different worries and therefore different beliefs and values. This also goes into the other criticism of feminist theory, which is that it focuses too much on the gender rather than, which is ironic because the criticism of feminist theory towards everything else is that it focuses not enough on gender. As this over-focus on gender kind of combines with the Western centrism of it. A big problem is the idea that two women from Norway, for example, and from a place like Yemen would have the same values and have some sort of connection solely based on their shared gender. This is something that critics of the theory argue is naive and is unlikely to make much of a difference. There is an inherent lack of solidarity, which proponents of the theory believe that there is, and in some extent, this is especially true, because this theory ignores things such as, for example, religious or cultural norms. For example, the belief that transgender women should have their experiences lifted up is something that may resonate with a white feminist in Norway or Denmark, but it is something that likely resonates a little bit less with a woman in Japan, and it likely resonates significantly less with a woman coming from the Middle East or Central Africa. And so this is essentially just yet another theory, which, like all the rest of them, has both its detractors and its supporters.